I'm starting to get worried about flat earthers. I made a video about this a couple of years ago, and I thought that it was a temporary curiosity, like some religious sects have a moment in the sun and then disappear. But the flat earther community seems to be growing. On the face of it, flat earth beliefs are completely bizarre. Most flat earthers think that the earth is a disk with a north pole in the middle and the south pole is a wall on the outside that keeps the water from escaping. They can't really agree on where the continents are or how many there are, or whether the south pole maybe extends all the way to infinity. So it's a flat earth multiverse theory, basically. Part of the reason people believe in this is just a lack of basic science education. Some of them think that if the Earth was a globe, then water just run off on the South Pole, pulled down by I wonder what. They also misunderstand how perspective works, how trigonometry works, how cameras work, and on it goes. But it's not just a matter of misunderstanding. If you believe that the Earth is flat, you also have to believe in a global conspiracy that's hiding the truth for no particular reason. For starters, you must believe that most of physics is wrong, and physicists are just making things up. We're all part of a big conspiracy. Geophysicists, they're also in on it. Astrophysicists, all liars. Everyone who's ever been involved in launching a rocket into space or putting a satellite into orbit is part of that conspiracy too. Moon landings didn't happen. The ISS, not in orbit. Every single photo that's ever been taken of Earth from space, fake. Sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? But then lots of people also believe that an omniscient being keeps track of who they have sex with. A recent representative poll in North America found that 5% think the Earth is flat and another 6% aren't quite sure. I'm not quite sure how many people lie in these polls, but there's no doubt that interest in flat Earth ideas has spiked in the past decade, as you can see in the Google search trends. In 2009, the International Flat Earth Society set up a website. In 2013, part of its members set up a wiki and discussion forum. Around 2015, the topic started to appear on YouTube and spread from here. In 2017, the first Flat Earth conference took place, which attracted a lot of media attention. YouTube made big changes to its recommendation algorithm, and interest tapered somewhat off after that. But rather than just fading away, in recent years, interest in flat Earth has been on the rise again. It's probably to no small part because of TikTok, which has now become a haven for flat earthers. Scientists don't take flat earthers seriously, and I can see where they're coming from, but I think it's a mistake. To me, flat earthers are the first symptom of a much bigger problem. They show us what happens when people realize they can't understand modern science, don't trust scientists, and therefore throw out even the most basic scientific knowledge on the rationale of skepticism. Flat earthers are somewhat extreme in that they're actually throwing out evidence that they could test themselves if they weren't so bad at science. But the underlying problem is much deeper, because in most of modern science, the average person can't test evidence for themselves. This is why I think it makes sense to identify the origin of this problem. And some scientists have actually studied this. They found that the scientific literacy of flat earthers tends to be well below population average, and at the same time they're much more confident of their scientific knowledge than the average person. On top of this, we then get echo chambers in social media that reinforce their misjudgment. The trouble is that these two issues, lack of knowledge and an inability to recognize this lack of knowledge, are bound to become increasingly widespread, simply because, unfortunately, scientific knowledge isn't heritable. We're born without knowing anything of modern science. We have to learn everything, and the more sophisticated science becomes, the more learning that requires. Sometime in the middle of the 20th century or so, we reached a point where modern science just stopped being comprehensible to anyone without a special degree, and this is still the case. I don't really understand how CRISPR works. I've no idea what Teichmuller theory is. I don't know how phones work. and I yet have to figure out how to properly fertilize our lawn. There's just too much knowledge in the world to learn it all, and unfortunately no one has yet developed a pill for quantum mechanics. But you don't actually need to learn any physics to see that the Earth isn't flat. Even leaving aside that it requires you to believe in this huge conspiracy, flat Earth ideas have a much bigger problem. Is that you can't do anything with them. You can't use them to do as much as predict sunset and sunrise, let alone tides or solar eclipses or the paths of planets. You can't calculate airplane routes or understand satellite navigation. Even if you know nothing about how scientists do calculate these things, it isn't hard to convince yourself that someone, somehow, did manage to actually calculate when the sun will rise and when solar eclipses will occur. And those were not the people who believe that the Earth is flat. Why do flat earthers not realize this? I suspect what's going on is that they don't have the faintest clue how modern science works. They might actually believe that drawing a rotating blob on a disk in Blender is the state of the art in physics. So what are we to do? There'll always be people who distrust scientists, and that might not even be a bad thing. But I think it's a mistake to ignore flat earthers. And I do have some sympathy for them, I really do. They're trying to figure out how nature works, and that's a good thing. We should just encourage them to get better at it. And then maybe one day they'll figure out that it's actually much easier to explain their observations if they stop believing that the Earth is flat.